pēnei ake rā pēr te tīmatanga, tēnei au te hōkai nei taku tapu ai. Ko te hōkai nuku, ko te hōkai rangi, ko te hōkai a tō tupuna tū mataue. I pikitia e tāne, ki ngā rangi tū hāhā ki ti o manono, i roko hina atu rā ko i o te matu wakure ana kei riru i hua i ku ngā kete o te wānanga. Iei, ko te katatua auri, ko te katatua atea, ko te kate aronui. Ka tiri tiri a ka pou a ki papatua nuku kia puta teira tangata ki te whai au, ki te ao mara matuturu o whiti whakamaua kia tīna. Haumi e hui e. Hoi anua, kua roa te ata. E kore au e whakaroa roa rawa. Engari me mihi ake ka tika kei riria au e aku kaumātua. Nō reira kei ngā whānau, kei ngā kaumātua, kei ngā kūkui a kua haramai nei koutou ki te tiaki i te kaupapa. I ngā kuao nei kua whanai atu i te kohanga, i tēnei ata, nau mai haramai. Haramai tautokana mai e nei pae whakamiharo nei. Tēnā koutou, o tira ia mauria mai o koutou mate. Kia tangihia, kia poroporoa ki tia. Kia maumahara i tātou. No te maumaharatanga kia Ngāti Nanahi, ka ngai tātou kia Ngāti Apōpō. Nō reira haramai. Tatu atu kia koutou o te whare wānanga nei ngā kai hoa i te waka, ngā kai urungi, ngā kai hautū, e te tumuaki tuarua. Tatu atu ki te kawa a Māui e noho ake nei, me mihi ake kātika. Ai te honore mema kōrua ko tō hoa tuahine e noho nei nā. Me he mei mōhio ai au ka tae mai koe kua tangohea au taku neketai. Ahoe no, he neketai praone. Nō reira, tēnā kōrua o tira ia tēnā tātou katoa tatu atu kia koutou. Kei te kaupapa o te rā, kei ngā kaupapa o te rā. Tēnā koutou. I love coming back here. It's always inspiring to come back here. I watched carefully as the graduates, were called to come up. Some of you walked very slowly because you weren't quite sure whether you'd got through or not. A couple of you rushed in case anyone changed their mind. Some of you had so much whakapapa, it took the entire walk from there to here to get all your iwi out. Some of you got big cheers. And I thought, well, they must be popular. Then I thought, probably not. It's just their parents, whānau and mates are relieved. This is an important time for you. A really important time. As we confront, as a world and as a country, some of the greatest challenges our species has ever confronted. Whether we'll survive to the times of your grandchildren. Whether we can finally shrug off the hangover of colonization and find a different way, a way that marries West and Pacific, that tracks a path that no one's ever succeeded in tracking. So many other things that I'm not going to list them because I'll forget something. You came to a university which I guess was called Victoria when you arrived. And that kind of underscores that colonisation story. I mean, it is Victoria. She was the other side of the treaty in 1840. And of course, we dress up like this. I got an honorary doctorate from Te Wānanga Wawanui, which is why, interestingly, it's a tribal wānanga, but I now look like Henry VIII. And all of those people look like my courtiers. To remind us there are some valuable things we inherited from that place. Some approaches to knowledge, systems of learning that are going to be quite useful to us, to you and to your grandchildren in the future. When I came through this place, that was all we got. We sang Gaudium something or other. Not a korowai to be seen, not a kahuhuruhuru to be seen, certainly not a haka, a ngeri, a waiata, a himene, a karanga. Nothing. Now look. I was thinking to myself as I was watching this process go on, what's changed in the, 35 years since I came through this place, 35 years. And you know what I noticed? The moko kauai in the room, the mataora in the room, the number of kahuhuruhuru, the number of korowai, the number of hieke, pihe, and it made me think, I expect they're right. Victoria is probably no longer a good name for this place. It's missing something important. I must say I do mourn for the numbers of chickens and pheasants that have given up their lives for this graduation ceremony. But we are at the fulcrum point of change, and you represent it. Not just in what you've studied and in the fact that you've chosen the Māori graduation, but in what you wear, in the way you present yourselves, in the way your whānau, your hapu and your iwi get up and do paikea once too often. Sorry, Ngāti Porou, I had to get that in. How can New Zealanders of any stripe not feel pride and belonging in watching this process go on? Because, you know, when I was your age, you could be forgiven for believing that Aotearoa was floating somewhere in the mid-Atlantic, somewhere between Britain and America. When I was a child, we had to stand up at the movies because the first thing that happened was they played God Save the Queen. That is a world you people can't possibly imagine. But it was just yesterday. It was just yesterday. I think we are on the most important journey we will ever be on as a country. We are heading south from the Atlantic to the Pacific at last. And we are coming to discover that we are a Polynesian country. And we are Polynesians. All of us. All of us. And that will save us from the hangover of the last 200 years, and it'll set us in a strong position for these existential challenges that we will face. I know this to be true because the rest of the world is looking at us little old Aotearoa for answers, with the ability, as we keep challenging ourselves to do, to synthesize and blend the West and the Pacific, to find new ways of thinking, new ways of doing, new ways of being, and new ways of relating. If we can do that here, the world will follow. Have no doubt the world will follow. You see, the graduation that I went to was siloed. You got your BAs, then your BScs, then your BCAs, and your LLBs, often on different nights. Because the genius of Western knowledge is to silo, to fragment, to break down, and to analyze every tiny little part. So that universities became places where you got to know more and more about less and less, until you knew everything about nothing. The journey this university is on is to reverse that, to break down walls, and to talk about, as we heard from I think it was the masters, the Rarotongan Ngāti Porou, wasn't it? The Rarotongan Ngāti Porou, ecosystem science and ecosystem tikanga. The blending of those two things produces answers that are superior to the separating and fragmenting of those two things in accordance with the approach of Western science. Now, I don't for a moment wish to set aside Western science. It can be incredibly helpful. But there has always been a layer missing. And you, all of you, are weaving that layer back in. That's your contribution to Aotearoa and to the planet. And I'm sorry we lay this burden on you. I'm very sorry we've had to lay this burden on you. But having watched you graduate and having seen the support of your whānau, your hapu and your iwi, having seen how much your staff are proud of what you've done, I couldn't possibly be more confident that you are the ones for this job. I couldn't be more confident. So Victoria University becomes Te Hui Whakapumau. Who would have thought? Someone said that the Te Hui Whakapumau marae was opened in 1986. Not true. The Te Hui Whakapumau marae was opened in 1980. It was the old chaplaincy building, and we chucked some carvings up on it and called it a Māori space. That was the beginning. Once that was done, the ambition grew and grew and grew. 1986, the new whare was built. 2023, we have the living pā, hopefully. And the living pā is the very embodiment of this idea that I was talking about. A pā, a Māori space, not just for the Māoris, but for the lawyers, the scientists, the doctors, the architects, the engineers, all to come and learn and draw from the wisdom of Te Ao Māori, where silos are broken down, because a culture that believes in whanaungatanga to its very core hates division and loves only connection. The living pā is kind of a culmination of the ideas you guys have been working on in your studies. And it, I believe, maybe I'm not objective because this is my university, it, I believe, will lead the world. Because ironically, interestingly, surprisingly, the breaking down of silos, walls and barriers is a revolutionary idea in Western knowledge, even if it's as old as kupe in tikanga Māori. So, the decolonisation story starts when we go like this and make stronger what was not as strong separately. And this is your challenge. Haere hoake. Nau mai haere. Tia kina tō tātou ao. Tia kina tō tātou iwi. Tia kina tō tātou tai ao. Tia kina o tātou mātauranga. E orai te iwi Māori. E orai Aotearoa. E orai te ao. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.